The anime begins with a high school boy named Yusuke Yatsuya. He is a loner who thinks his life is plain and boring. One day, during class, his teacher scolds him for not turning in a career questionnaire. After school, Yatsuya notices his classmates, Lu Shindu and Kuju Hakazaki, talking to each other. Something about them seems a little strange, but he doesn't think much of it. Then, something shocking happens. As soon as the teacher leaves the classroom, Shindu and Hakazaki suddenly disappear into thin air. Yatsuya is confused and doesn't understand what's going on. Things get even stranger when he hears the sound of a child running outside, and the classroom blackboard fills up with weird, mysterious drawings. Before Yatsuya can figure out what's happening, his body starts glowing. Suddenly, he is transported to another world. When Yatsuya arrives, he realizes he isn't alone. Shindu and Hakazaki are there too, and they look just as confused as he is. But Shindu seems to know a little more about what's happening. She warns them that a strange, half-faced person is about to appear. Just as she says this, a creepy creature with half a face shows up. It calls itself the Game Master. The Game Master explains why they are there. Turns out, Yatsuya, Shindu, and Hakazaki are now part of a dangerous game. Their first mission is to help a village chief in this strange new world, but they only have 14 days to do it. The problem is the world now filled with terrifying monsters that want to hurt them. Then, the Game Master gives them special powers to help them on their quest. Shindu becomes a wind mage, able to use magic. Hakazaki turns into a warrior with great fighting skills. When it's Yatsuya's turn, the Game Master spins a roulette wheel to decide his role. But Yatsuya gets unlucky, cause he ends up as a simple farmer with no fighting skills at all. Before they can ask any more questions, the Game Master disappears, leaving the three of them to figure out what to do. Yatsuya, now a level 1 farmer, knows this mission won't be easy. He'll have to use his wits and work together with his classmates if they're going to survive in this dangerous, monster-filled world. After hearing all of that, Yatsuya was confused, so he asked Shindu for an explanation. Luckily, Shindu was happy to tell him everything. She explained that she was the first one among them to be summoned by the Game Master to this strange world. She completed a task given by the Game Master and was sent back to the real world. Before she left, the Game Master told her to become friends with Hakazaki. Shindu followed the instructions, and a few days later, she was summoned again to the other world, and this time, with Hakazaki. After hearing Shindu's story, Yatsuya realized that this wasn't a dream. He decided to go on the mission with Shindu and Hakazaki. The three of them walked through a dark forest until they found a glowing green sign. Shindu explained that it was called a log point, a magical object that could show events from the past. Feeling curious, Yatsuya touched the log point. Suddenly, he saw a scene showing how Hakazaki first arrived in the world. Before Yatsuya could make sense of what he saw, danger struck. Goblins appeared out of nowhere, ready to attack. Feeling brave, Yatsuya grabbed his weapon, which is a sickle, and ran toward the goblins. But when he tried to fight, his sickle broke immediately. He panicked and called for help from Shindu and Hakazaki. And Shindu, who was a mage, tried to use her magic. But because her level was still very low, she could only create a weak breeze, like the wind from a small fan. Hakazaki, the knight, was just as unprepared. She was so scared that she threw her sword at the goblins instead of fighting them. Yatsuya saw the sword lying on the ground and decided to use it. But when he tried to pick it up, he couldn't. Only Hakazaki, the true owner, could use the sword. Frustrated but not ready to give up, Yatsuya grabbed his backup weapon, which is a hoe, and charged at the goblins again. Unfortunately, the hoe broke just like the sickle. With no weapon left to defend himself, Yatsuya was quickly overpowered. The goblins attacked him, and he was defeated instantly. It was a tough lesson for him, cause this world was far more dangerous than he had imagined. When Yatsuya died, his spirit floated out of his body. He was even more shocked when he saw the goblins attack and kill Hakazaki. But then, something amazing happened. Just a few seconds later, Yatsuya's spirit returned to his body. He was alive again. Shindu explained what was going on. In that world, players like them would automatically come back to life 30 seconds after dying. Hearing this, Yatsuya felt a little more confident. If he could keep coming back, maybe they had a chance to win. He quickly came up with a plan. First, Yatsuya told Shindu to use her wind magic to create dust. The dust cloud was thick and blocked the goblin's view, giving Yatsuya a chance to sneak up on them. He grabbed his weapon and stabbed the goblins, defeating them one by one. In the end, they won the fight, even though Yatsuya died again during the battle. After their victory, something still bothered Yatsuya. He wondered what would happen if all three of them died at the same time. Shindu, looking serious, explained that if that happened, they would truly die, with no chance of coming back to life. That night, the group found a quiet spot to rest on some rocks. As they sat, Yatsuya checked his broken weapons and realized they wouldn't fix themselves for another 5 days. This made him think about something else. He started wondering what kind of reward they would get if they completed the mission. There, Shindu explained calmly that the game master would let them ask one question as their reward, and just one. At that time, Yatsuya felt like there was still so much to understand about this strange world. But for now, he knew he had to focus on staying alive and finishing the mission. After hearing Shindu's answer, Yatsuya told the others he was going to keep watch around the camp. But that wasn't his real plan. He secretly went into the forest and hunted goblins. By defeating them, he managed to level up and get stronger. Suddenly, a loud scream came from the camp. It was Shindu. Yatsuya rushed back to see what had happened. When he arrived, he saw a terrifying troll attacking the camp. Hakazaki was badly hurt, and Shindu was swallowed by the troll. Yatsuya panicked. He decided to grab Hakazaki and run away, because he knew if he died too, everything would be over. He couldn't take that risk. The next day, Yatsuya and Hakazaki reached a lake. That's when he noticed Hakazaki's injured hand wasn't healing like it should. She guessed it was because the troll had eaten her hand. Hearing this, Yatsuya began to worry about Shindu. If her whole body was eaten, she might not come back to life. Realizing this, he decided they would have to complete the mission without her. A while later, Yatsuya and Hakazaki arrived at the village they were supposed to help. The villagers cheered and called them heroes, which confused Yatsuya and Hakazaki. They met the village chief, who explained why they were needed. A troll had been attacking the village, and the villagers needed their help to defeat it and save everyone. Yatsuya felt frustrated and gloomy. He knew he wasn't strong enough to fight a troll at his current level. But this time, he decided not to run away. Instead, he came up with a plan. He would leave the village to hunt more monsters and level up so he could be strong enough to face the troll. Before leaving, he told Hakazaki to stay in the village where it was safe. He knew the battle ahead would be tough, but he was determined to succeed. A few moments passed. Yatsuya was in the forest, fighting goblins. He was winning the battle, but one goblin managed to escape. This meant Yatsuya could only reach level 9. To change his job, he needed to get to level 10, but he was too tired and needed to rest. Just as Yatsuya decided to take a break, a notification appeared. It said that Hakazaki had died. Panicking, he rushed back to the village, only to find it completely destroyed. Luckily, there was a log point nearby. Without wasting time, Yatsuya touched it to see what had happened. The log point showed a scene from earlier. It revealed Hakazaki training hard with a sword, and she wasn't alone. A boy was helping her practice. While training, Hakazaki talked about herself. She explained how, in the real world, she couldn't do much physical activity because of an illness that made her weak. But in this world, she felt healthy and strong, able to move freely. She was determined to get better at fighting, so she could help her team. Just as Hakazaki finished talking, a troll attacked the village. The scene showed how the troll overpowered her, and in the end, ate her. Yatsuya watched in shock, realizing how hard Hakazaki had worked and the danger they were all in. The scene shown by the log point made Yatsuya realize that he had been thinking only about himself all this time. But before he could go far to find the troll, the monster appeared right in front of him and attacked. The troll hit him so hard that Yatsuya was thrown far away, but luckily, he wasn't hurt. He landed in the water and quickly got back up. He ran into the forest, where he spotted a goblin. Without wasting time, he defeated the goblin and finally reached level 10. As soon as he leveled up, time suddenly stopped. The game master appeared before him, congratulating him and spinning the job roulette to give him a new role. This time, Yatsuya got a bit luckier cause he became a chef. With his new ability and weapon, a sharp knife, Yatsuya returned to fight the troll. Using the knife, he managed to cut open the troll's stomach, bringing Shindu and Hakazaki back to life. But the troll wasn't defeated yet. Yatsuya quickly came up with a risky plan to finish the monster. He explained it to Shindu. First, he would climb inside the troll's stomach through the wound he had just made and attack it from the inside. While Yatsuya was inside, Shindu would climb onto the troll's head and use her wind magic to strike the final blow. Even though it was dangerous, the plan worked, and they successfully defeated the troll. Not long after, the game master appeared again. He congratulated them for completing the mission and allowed Yatsuya to ask a question. This made Yatsuya remember the questions Shindu and Hakazaki had asked before entering this world. Shindu had asked why the game master chose her to join the game, and the answer was surprising that it wasn't the game master who chose her, but someone she knew. Hakazaki's question was about who the game master really was. The game master answered that he was from the future. After thinking for a moment, Yatsuya asked what would happen after they finished all the missions. To answer, the game master showed them a glimpse of the future. In the vision, Yatsuya and the other players were fighting monsters that were attacking their city. Before Yatsuya could fully understand the vision, the game master sent him and his friends back to the real world. When they returned, they discovered something amazing. Even though they had spent so much time in the other world, time in the real world hadn't moved at all cause it was as if no time had passed. Some time had passed since Yatsuya and his friends returned to the real world. One day, as Yatsuya ran through the streets of Tokyo, he couldn't stop thinking about the vision the game master had shown him. Even though it was just a glimpse, Yatsuya recognized the city in the vision, and it was Tokyo, his home. That meant, in the future, he and the other players would have to fight to protect their city from monsters. While he was lost in thought, Yatsuya's phone suddenly rang. To his surprise, it was the game master calling. He gave Yatsuya a new mission to go to the second floor of a strange school and save a girl named Yuka. She was being bullied by other students. Yatsuya knew he had to succeed. If he failed, the risks in his next mission would become much greater. Determined, Yatsuya destroyed all of the bullies' phones, scaring them away and saving Yuka. 2 weeks later, Yatsuya, Shindu, and Hakazaki were summoned back to the other world. To their surprise, Yuka was summoned as well, joining them as the fourth member of their team. When the game master spun the roulette to assign Yuka a role, she was lucky cause she became a fire mage, a powerful job. The game master also announced a new rule that from now on, if any of them died, they would have to wait 40 seconds before coming back to life instead of 30. The extra 10 seconds were added to make the game even harder. This time, their mission was to deliver goods to a village called Redorpo and explore 5% of the map. They only had 40 days to complete these tasks. After explaining the mission, the game master, as usual, disappeared, leaving the team to figure out how to survive and succeed. After battling centipede monsters and leveling up, Yatsuya and his friends arrived at the village they had once saved. But what they found shocked them. The village was in ruins, abandoned, and not a single person was left. While they were standing there, a merchant passed by and recognized them as the heroes who had saved the village. He explained that the village had been abandoned for 5 years, revealing that time in this world moved differently from their own. Since there was nothing they could do about the village, Yatsuya asked the merchant about their next destination, Redorpo. The merchant showed them his map and pointed out that Redorpo was far to the west, almost at the edge of the continent. They were currently in the east, and walking there would take too long. Shinda begged the merchant to lend them his horse, but he refused, saying he needed it to carry his goods. Instead, he told them about a martial arts tournament in a place called Cordonal. The prize for the winner was 3 horses. Hearing this, Yatsuya and the group decided to head to Cordonal to join the tournament. On their way to Cordonal, the group was ambushed by bandits. Yatsuya pulled out his knife, ready to fight, but just as he was about to attack, a notification from the game master appeared. It warned him that attacking another human would lower his level. Not wanting to lose their progress, Yatsuya and the others decided to run instead. As they fled, they realized that Shindu was missing. Yuka suspected that the bandits had captured her. Yatsuya, however, told Yuka and Hakazaki to continue their journey to complete the mission, arguing that saving other players wasn't necessary for success. As long as one of them completed the mission, Shindu would survive. But Yuka and Hakazaki strongly disagreed with Yatsuya. They couldn't leave Shindu behind. Then the group decided to split up. Yatsuya continued to coordinate for the tournament, while Yuka and Hakazaki went to rescue Shindu. The two girls found the bandits' hideout, but were quickly caught locked in a cage, and it's right alongside Shindu. As Yatsuya traveled, he defeated goblins along the way, which helped him level up. This time, he unlocked a new job called Organism Wizard. With this ability, he could speed up or slow down the metabolism of living things just by touching them. After some time, Yatsuya finally reached Cordonal. Without wasting any time, he entered a tournament. His opponent was a skilled knight named Kaval. At that time, Yatsuya fought bravely, charging forward to attack her, but Kaval was far stronger. She easily blocked his attacks and even managed to kill him. However, Yatsuya's ability to come back to life after 40 seconds saved him. He stood up again, unharmed, much to Kaval's amazement. Although she had heard rumors about heroes who could revive, seeing it happen still surprised her. Yatsuya admitted defeat, realizing he could no longer win the prize of horses. Instead, he asked Kaval if she would lend him a horse. To his surprise, Kaval agreed, but she had a condition. Yatsuya would have to help her defeat big monsters, like trolls, in return. Hearing this, Yatsuya remembered the bandits who had kidnapped his friend, Shindu. Instead of hunting monsters, he proposed a different idea to Kaval, and they should go after the bandits instead. Hearing that, Kaval agreed with the plan and gathered troops in Cordonal City to lead an attack on the bandits' hideout. The soldiers from Cordonal were strong and quickly cornered the bandits. Desperate, the bandits brought out a huge, powerful man called the Berserker. And Kaval, who was fearless and skilled with her sword, rushed forward to fight the Berserker. The battle was intense, and Kaval fought bravely, but the Berserker was incredibly strong. After a while, Kaval started to get tired, and her stamina was running out. Seeing that Kaval was in danger, Yatsuya quickly jumped in to help. He blocked the Berserker's attack and distracted him, giving Kaval an opening. Wasting no time, Kaval used all her strength and delivered a powerful slash, defeating the Berserker. With the bandits defeated, Yatsuya rescued his teammates. They were overjoyed to be reunited, but their celebration was interrupted by Kaval. She announced that she and a few of her bodyguards would take a break from their duties to join Yatsuya's group on the journey to Redorpo. This was great news, as Kaval had horses, which would make their trip much faster. However, Kaval had two conditions. First, Yatsuya and his team had to return her horses once they reached Redorpo. Second, they had to let her train them in sword fighting during the journey. Yatsuya and his friends agreed to her terms, and they set off together. True to her word, Kaval stopped several times along the way to teach Yatsuya and the three girls swordsmanship. A few days later, the group arrived at a forest filled with goblins. Yatsuya and his team decided to take on the goblins since they had been focusing on training and hadn't leveled up much since leaving the bandits' hideout. The team started fighting the goblins, and to everyone's surprise, Hakazaki jumped into the action. She finally found the courage to face a goblin and managed to defeat one. However, after the fight, she felt guilty and even apologized to the goblin she had killed. The next day, the group came across some people being attacked by kobolds. Yatsuya guessed that these people might be carrying goods to Redorpo. To help them, he split the team into two. Yatsuya and Hakazaki stayed behind to fight the kobolds, while Shindu, Yuka, and Kaval continued their journey. However, Yatsuya and Hakazaki found the kobolds harder to fight than they expected. Seeing their struggle, Kaval and the others decided to return and help. It was a smart choice cause Kaval easily defeated the kobolds, saving the day. The people they rescued turned out to be soldiers from the Diak Kingdom. They were transporting prisoners, called heretics, to Redorpo for execution. Camilto, the leader of the soldiers, explained that the prisoners worshipped the god Arteros, a religion forbidden in the Diak Kingdom. By order of the king, the heretics were to be executed publicly. Hearing this, Kaval became furious. She accused the Diak kingdom of being a cruel and controlling regime that wanted to dominate the entire continent. She was especially angry that the king would send his soldiers to execute his own people in another country. Camilto was just as angry at Kaval's insults. Tensions rose, and both drew their weapons, ready to fight. Fortunately, Shinda stepped in before things got worse. She managed to calm them down, and they lowered their weapons. In the middle of the tense situation, Yatsuya called his team together for a discussion. He had a strong feeling that the items they were supposed to deliver to Rodorpo, as instructed by the game master, were actually the heretic prisoners. But Yatsuya also suspected that this was a test. He thought the game master might be trying to see if they were willing to sacrifice human lives just to complete their mission. Yatsuya and his team couldn't decide what the right thing to do was. For now, they chose to go along with the soldiers of the Diak kingdom and accompany them as they transported the prisoners to Rodorpo. 2 days later, the group reached a mountainous area. Camilto, the leader of the soldiers, told them about a shortcut to Rodorpo. He said the shortcut was a cave that ran under the mountains. Trusting Camilto, Yatsuya and his team followed his suggestion and entered the cave. But it was all a trap. Once they were inside, Camilto activated a mechanism that sealed the exit behind them. They were now trapped inside the cave, with no way out. Now, Yatsuya was growing more worried. He wasn't sure how they could escape the cave, and now they had lost the prisoners, who were likely the items they needed to deliver to Rodorpo. Despite this, Kaval stayed determined. She encouraged everyone to focus on finding a way out of the cave quickly, so they could confront the traitors. With no other choice, the group moved deeper into the cave. The journey wasn't easy. The cave was filled with dangerous traps. At one point, Yatsuya fell into a deep hole and became separated from the group. The walls were too steep for him to climb, so he told the others to continue without him while he figured out a way to get out. Shindu, Hakazaki, and Kaval continued without Yatsuya. As they walked, Hakazaki asked for a pen and paper to study the traps they had encountered. After carefully analyzing and calculating, she figured out how the traps worked. Thanks to her, the group was able to avoid the traps and keep moving safely. Meanwhile, Yatsuya used his knife to carve out footholds in the wall, which allowed him to climb out of the hole and rejoin the path. Eventually, Shinda's group reached the exit gate of the cave. When they opened it, they found themselves in a large battle arena. To their shock, a giant monster called a gargoyle stood before them, ready to fight. As if that wasn't bad enough, a swarm of vampire bats appeared, distracting and scattering the group. Kaval stepped forward with a confident smile, ready to take on the gargoyle. While the others fought off the bats, she engaged the monster in battle. However, the gargoyle was incredibly strong. After an intense fight, the gargoyle managed to stab Kaval, and she fell into the water below, badly hurt. After defeating Kaval, the gargoyle turned its attention to Shindu, who was trembling with fear. She backed away slowly, accidentally stepping on and killing a bat. To her surprise, that one bat gave her just enough experience to reach level 10. Time suddenly stopped, and the game master appeared. He spun the roulette and gave Shindu a new job as a knight. With her new sword, Shindu bravely attacked the gargoyle. However, her sword wasn't strong enough to cut through the monster's tough skin. The gargoyle counterattacked, easily throwing her across the arena. As Shindu struggled to stand, she remembered Kaval's lessons on swordsmanship. Kaval had taught her that the best way to stab a strong opponent was to strike directly from above, aiming for the heart. This way, the sword wouldn't be blocked by the ribs. Believing it was worth a try, Shinda charged forward and used the technique. Turns out her plan worked perfectly. She successfully hurt the gargoyle's heart, killing the monster. However, the victory came at a cost cause Shinda lost her right arm in the fight. A few moments later, Yatsuya arrived at the battle arena. He saw Shindu standing triumphantly, smiling despite her injuries. Nearby, one of Kaval's men was shouting, begging Yatsuya to hurry and save Kaval, who was still badly hurt. When Kaval woke up, she found herself lying in a carriage. The wound in her stomach was already healed. Her bodyguard, Makwa, explained that Yatsuya had healed her using monster blood, but it had drained all of his mana. After explaining, Makwa stepped out of the carriage, leaving Kaval alone with Yatsuya, who was still unconscious. Suddenly, Kaval leaned over and kissed Yatsuya. At that exact moment, Shindu and the others arrived to check on Kaval. They froze in shock at what they saw. Curious, Shindu asked Kaval why she kissed him. Kaval just shrugged and said she felt like doing it cause there was no other reason. Later that afternoon, Yatsuya finally woke up. Wasting no time, he gathered his teammates to discuss their next steps for the mission. Based on his idea, they decided to split into two groups. Team A, made up of Hakazaki, Shindu, and Makwa, would search for the items they needed to deliver to Rodorpo. Meanwhile, Team B consists of Yatsuya, Yuka, and Kaval would focus on confronting the Diak soldiers. Soon after, Team A quickly left to start their search, while Team B stayed behind to come up with a plan. They needed to be very careful because directly fighting the Diak soldiers could spark a war between the Diak kingdom and Cordonal. After thinking hard, Yatsuya finally came up with a strategy. The next afternoon, Kaval, Yuka, and Yatsuya caught up with Kamilto and his soldiers. Instead of acting right away, they decided to observe the group, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came at night. Yuka walked into the Diak soldiers' camp and pretended to betray Yatsuya. She told Kamilto that she didn't get along with Yatsuya because he had joined the forbidden Arteros religion. To prove her loyalty, she offered to lead Kamilto to Yatsuya's camp so they could capture him. At that moment, Kamilto was suspicious of Yuka's claim, but he decided to take the chance. He ordered his men to stay behind and guard the prisoners, bringing only one soldier with him to follow Yuka. As they walked in the dark, Kamilto's soldier suddenly stabbed Yuka in the back, thinking it would be safer to check the location without her. However, when they reached the spot Yuka had pointed out, there was no sign of Yatsuya or anyone else. Realizing she had lied, they returned to the camp, where they found Yuka alive and back in the carriage. They didn't know Yuka had used her ability to revive after death. Meanwhile, Yatsuya had used the distraction to sneak into the camp. While Kamilto was away, Yatsuya knocked out the guards watching over the prisoners. He then told the prisoners to swap clothes with Kamilto's soldiers, disguising themselves. After that, he instructed the freed prisoners to hide in a nearby cave to stay safe. When Kamilto returned to the camp, Yatsuya pointed to the unconscious soldiers on the ground and claimed they were the captives he had subdued. Before Kamilto could figure out the truth, Yatsuya set the soldiers on fire. Kamilto panicked, thinking it was the captives who were burning. Using the confusion to their advantage, Yatsuya and Yuka quickly escaped. They rode off on Kamilto's horse and headed to the cave where the freed prisoners were waiting. Kamilto was heartbroken and furious over his failure to complete the mission given to him by his king. Still, he wrote a report about his failure and sent it to the king using a bird he had brought with him. But just as the bird flew away, Kaval appeared out of nowhere and challenged Kamilto to a duel. She told him to pick up his weapon, and the two faced off in a fast and intense battle. In the end, Kaval emerged as the winner. The next day, Yatsuya, Yuka, and Kaval continued their journey to Rodorpo with the prisoners they had rescued. They carried boxes containing the decapitated heads of Kamilto's soldiers, as Yatsuya guessed that these were the items they needed to deliver to complete the Game Master's mission. In another part of the world, Team A managed to find a courier transporting goods to Rodorpo. Shindu offered to help escort him safely. However, they didn't know the courier already had a bodyguard. The bodyguard stepped out of the cart and immediately became hostile, suspecting Shindu and her group were heroes. He didn't want anyone interfering with his job and drew his sword to attack Shindu. Shindu easily defeated the bodyguard in a quick fight. Left with no other choice, the bodyguard reluctantly agreed to cooperate with Shindu and her team to escort the courier to Rodorpo. Even after making progress, Shindu and Hakazaki still weren't sure if what they were doing would complete the mission. Suddenly, a notification from the Game Master appeared, telling them that the mission to deliver goods to Rodorpo had been completed. They were confused about how it happened. It turned out the notification appeared because Team B had already arrived in Rodorpo. Yatsuya, Yuka, and Kaval handed over the boxes of severed heads to the authorities as evidence of the Diak Kingdom's evil plans and actions. They also reported the atrocities committed by Diak soldiers and asked the authorities to meet the rescued victims for further proof. The authorities in Rodorpo were grateful to Kaval and her team for stopping the Diot Kingdom's cruel plot. However, they kindly advised Kaval not to bring severed heads as evidence in the future, even if it seemed necessary. After completing their first mission, Yatsuya, Yuka, and Kaval reunited with Team A, who had just arrived in Rodorpo. They didn't waste any time and immediately discussed their final task, exploring 5% of the map. With only a day and a half left to complete the mission, they decided to split up and head in 4 different directions to cover more ground. Before they left, they said goodbye to Kaval. She was visibly sad to see Yatsuya go. Over time, she had grown to care for him deeply, but she knew she couldn't stop him. All she could do was hope that Yatsuya would stay safe. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned for Yatsuya and his team. Then, a sudden blizzard hit, slowing down their progress significantly. With only 6 hours left, they still had 10 kilometers to explore. Yatsuya began to doubt whether they could complete the mission in time. The situation worsened when he accidentally fell into a dungeon. Despite the setback, Yatsuya refused to give up. He decided to explore the dungeon, hoping it would help them complete the mission. Just as his determination returned, a notification appeared, shocking him. It informed him that Hakazaki had died, and even worse, her current condition made it impossible for her to be revived. Meanwhile, Shinda briefly lost consciousness, but woke up when she saw the notification about Hakazaki's death. Determined to keep going, she continued forward and eventually spotted lights in the distance. The lights gave her hope, as they meant there was a settlement nearby where she could borrow a horse to speed up her progress. Excited, Shinda hurried toward the lights, not realizing she was crossing a frozen lake. Just as she neared the source of the lights, the ice beneath her feet cracked, and she fell into the freezing water. Unable to escape, Shinda drowned. Because of her situation, she couldn't come back to life, just like Hakazaki. The only way for both of them to be revived was if Yatsuya or Yuka completed the mission. When Yatsuya received the notification of Shinda's death, he was deeply disappointed. He had been counting on her to help finish the mission. But Yatsuya knew there was no time to dwell on his sadness, cause he had to keep going. He pressed forward in the dungeon until he reached a dead end. At the dead end, Yatsuya noticed a giant worm digging through the ground. Hoping it might lead him to a way out, he decided to follow the worm. But as he trailed behind it, he suddenly heard a noise from behind. When he turned to check, he saw a monster ready to attack him. There, Yatsuya fought bravely, but couldn't escape his fate. He was killed. Now, Yuka was the only one left alive. When Yuka learned of Yatsuya's death, she felt completely hopeless. With all her teammates gone, she believed there was no way she could complete the mission alone. Feeling defeated, Yuka stopped moving, waiting quietly for the end to come. Suddenly, Yuka's imagination sparked. She began to see illusions of her favorite anime characters from childhood, and it's the Magia sisters. The characters appeared before her, cheering her on and reminding her of their battles against evil. They had never given up, no matter how hard things got, and they encouraged Yuka to do the same. Thinking about all the episodes she had watched, Yuka felt her courage return. She stood up, using her fire magic to warm her freezing body, and started moving forward again. But after a while, she began to reach her limit, her strength fading. Just when she thought she couldn't go on, a magician named Fatina appeared, riding a giant cat. Fatina offered Yuka a ride, and without hesitation, Yuka climbed onto the cat. Exhausted but determined, Yuka explained her situation to Fatina, crying as she realized she had only 3 minutes left to complete the mission. Hearing this, Fatina summoned a wind spirit to make them move faster. With the extra speed, Yuka pushed through and managed to complete the mission just seconds before the deadline. The game master then appeared, summoning Yuka and reviving Yatsuya, Shindu, and Hakazaki. As a reward for completing the mission, the game master gave Yuka the chance to ask one question. At first, Yuka wanted to ask about Fatina's identity, wondering who the magician really was. But then she realized that Fatina's appearance was likely arranged by the game master to help her at the last moment. Not wanting to waste such an important question, Yuka asked something that had been on her mind for a long time, whether this other world real, or is it just virtual? To everyone's surprise, the game master explained that the world they had been in was a parallel Earth. It was an alternate version of their planet, created from a different timeline. This meant that all the creatures and people in that world were real and alive. Hearing this, Yatsuya froze. He realized that the people he had killed during the mission were actual humans. The weight of what he had done hit him hard, and he began to tremble with guilt. Before Yatsuya could ask the game master anything, he and the others were sent back to their own world. That night, Yatsuya couldn't stop thinking about the lives he had taken. His guilt kept him awake, and the next day at school, he found it hard to focus. The memories of his actions haunted him. Later, as Yatsuya walked home, he received a message from the game master. It asked how does he feel after killing people. After reading the Yatsuya didn't reply. He was too shocked and overwhelmed to respond. Feeling ignored, the game master appeared directly before Yatsuya, this time taking the form of a little girl. She asked the question again, how does he feel after killing people? Yatsuya, shaken, admitted that he felt guilty. He said that if he had known the truth about the world earlier, he would never have killed the people there. The game master, not paying much attention to Yatsuya's answer, invited him to meet the next player who would join his team. They went to a restaurant, where a man sat at a table near the front. The game master explained that the man was a drug dealer, and in 20 seconds, the fifth player, Keita, would arrive and kill him. Just as the game master said, after 20 seconds, 3 masked men entered the restaurant to attack the drug dealer. Yatsuya tried to stop them by tripping one of the masked men, which led to a fight. During the battle, Yatsuya accidentally pulled off the mask of one of the attackers, revealing Keita. Suddenly, another man entered the scene. He was the mastermind behind the plan to kill the drug dealer. Mistaking Yatsuya for the drug dealer's accomplice, the man pointed a gun at him, ready to shoot. Luckily, the game master stepped in to help. He gave Yatsuya a glove, a special item from the other world. With the glove's power, Yatsuya managed to defeat the gunman and escape the danger. Afterward, the game master took Yatsuya to the rooftop of a building to talk. There, Yatsuya admitted that he was just an ordinary kid, unsure of his place in the world. But he also shared that he was determined to keep fighting for the truth and doing what he believed was right, that both now and in the future. And with that, the first season of this anime ends. The moral lesson from this anime is never judge your life's worth by your job title, cause even a farmer can fight goblins if you throw enough hose at them.